Tim Restall, president of Hartford Yard Goats. Thank you for joining A760 as we kind of get ready for the Shaping CT's Future event on the 24th. Wow, soon. On sports and entertainment innovation. With us today is Tim, one of our big producers here. As we gear up for the event, I think there's a lot of folks that are certainly going to be interested in your perspective, really running a successful operation that has corporate partners, public fans, kind of a dedicated fan base, is in the heart of the state. What have been some of the sort of the major milestones that you've looked to in the last couple years to really track the success of the program?
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, it's exciting that that April 24th is coming up quickly, right? I mean, that's a big event, and exciting to see how much interest there is in that. And it really just ties to so many different levels of sports. So with the Yard Goats, we've been very fortunate that, we're celebrating our 10th season.
Wow.
So it's flown by. And it's our 9th season at Dunkin Park. And, part of it, you look at, measures of success from our standpoint, whether it's attendance, whether it's, corporate sponsorship, community involvement, and then the last thing we look at is the wins and losses, right? Because the baseball, for us, being a AA affiliate of the Colorado Rockies, it's about developing our players to major league. So it's not about so much the wins and losses, but it's about the fan experience. And I think that's one of the things I always talk about when I talk to colleagues all throughout the country with regards to, what's so special in Hartford, what makes Hartford different than other teams. And the fan base here is different than anywhere else in the country. And I think that shows up when we have attendance, shows up with events, shows up when you're walking down the street, you see someone wearing Yard Goats gear, they just want to support that team. And even though last year was our first time ever making the playoffs in 9 years or 8 years. So it was a big step. And, I often say that, the baseball team is finally catching up to us off the field with what we do with regards to fan experience, community programs, our in-game experience for entertaining the fans. We've been at a championship level, since, really year one. And it's always trying to make it the experience at the ballpark better so that, people want to come out again and again and again.
Well, you mentioned, and maybe you kind of answered a little bit, but when you talk about the uniqueness of the fans compared to other cities or other regions, what are some of the details there that is it demographic and makeup or?
Well, I think I see it
baseball
I see it when they come to the ballpark, right? The passion, and then when we first opened Dunkin Park, I would have fans come up to me and say, "There's nothing to be proud of in this state, but we are so proud of the Yard Goats. It's something to be proud of." And really, changing the tone of the fan experience and what people like, and really listening to them, because you want to listen to fans, you want to listen to how their experience is, what they like, what they don't like, so that you can fine tune that so the experience is the best it can be. So they're very, very supportive. It's amazing. I'll get friends in, California, they'll send me pictures. Like I was at the grocery store and someone's wearing a Yard Goats. I was working an event a couple years ago, and someone came up and it was a brew fest, and it was a 25-year-old person that said, "I'm Yard Goats' biggest fan," right? It doesn't, it goes to so many different levels. So.
And you guys won the minor league baseball team of the year last year. Why do you think you won that award? And what can other teams around the league, look to you guys as a role model for?
That's a great question. So you have to be nominated, and a lot of teams nominate themselves. We didn't nominate ourselves. We actually put in for community programs that year. And when you think of what that award means, it's out of 120 teams Major League Baseball chose us for the best organization. So I think it's multiple levels of that, whether it's ticket sales, sponsorship sales, overall fan experience, overall community programs, and really just the fan involvement. It's a big part of it, because if we just played baseball for 9 innings and there was no one in the stands, it wouldn't be special. And if we brought 6,000 people into a ballpark and there was no baseball, it would be pretty boring. So it's a combination of all those things and all the entertainment, and from the food to the music to the baby goat race, when kids are dressed up as goats running on the field, to getting a beer bat. And putting that on social media. There's so many different pieces of that I think all those added up to us being able to be, crowned minor league organization of the year.
Yeah. Has that been, has it been a model that others have tried to kind of replicate? Have you seen any take inspiration, or even from the relationship that you have with the community and with the state? Is there anything that you feel you've sort of uniquely brokered, or that others are trying to find the secret sauce and balance?
Yeah, a lot of people, we talk to colleagues all the time, and the nice thing about working in minor league baseball is I can talk to a team in Bowie or Richmond or Altoona, Pennsylvania, and we're not competitors because we're in different markets. So we do a lot of sharing best practices, what works, what doesn't work. And, for example, we have a most improved student program that just finished up this week, where we brought over, I think it's like 2,000 kids out to the ballpark so you get celebrated for most improved student, and they brought their families and friends and made cards and did a parade on the field. And that was an idea that 10 years ago we got from Portland Sea Dogs, right? So it's getting ideas, sharing ideas, and then executing them, making sure that it's the best experience. And then what works in Connecticut might not work in, say, El Paso, Texas, right? So it's knowing your market and what your relationship is with the community, with the city, with the state, with the region, and how that works.
Do you think the affiliation with the Rockies is neutral, positive, negative to interests?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more neutral and maybe a little positive. I mean, I often, when I go to speaking engagements, I talk about Rockies affiliate, which in the Northeast, you're either a Mets, Yankees, Red Sox, or you're a replant from, say, Baltimore or, Atlanta, or whatever the case it is. And, there's a couple Rocky fans out there, but we don't lead with baseball. We lead with Chompers and Choo Choo, our mascot, or we lead with our meatloaf sandwich that's on 2 glazed donuts, or the beer bat, or having a shirt that says "No goats, no glory," or the baby goat race, or things like that, where that's more important to us. And then the baseball is very important, and we have great prospects that are coming through the program. And, we're talking, I think we're up to 60 players that have come through the Yard Goats organization that now are playing Major League Baseball. We had the Boston Red Sox in town this week, and we had 3 Major League rehabs that played here in Hartford. So there's a lot of great baseball. And so, with the Rockies, they are a great organization. And we're just very fortunate that we can help their players develop to try to get to Major League level.
Yeah, and like you said, Hartford's such a great sports town. They had the Whalers ripped from them back in the 90s. And I think that is kind of been one of the roots, and they just want sports. They just want energy in the town. And we had Bruce from the Hartford Athletic here yesterday on the podcast, and we asked him, how important is it to lean on the other pro teams in Hartford? Can you answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. Bruce is a great friend.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we'll talk whether it's, video board or promotions or things like that. And it's so important. One of the things that when we first came to Hartford and relocated to New Britain, which was 12 miles away, we wanted to create a new identity, a new brand, a new figure for Hartford baseball. And, we talked about what it means to be from Hartford. And we brought a group, about 10, 15 people together for lunch. And afterwards, we worked with a marketing company that really said, really, you think of Hartford as an underdog, right? You're in between 2 major cities. And really, we talked about almost like being, a fighter with an underdog that wants to fight, that wants to claw, wants to be supportive, right? Yeah. And I think you see that with a lot of the teams here where a lot of people will often talk to me and say, are you going to ever be a AAA team versus a AA team? Like we're a AA team, and we're in the baseball here. I feel is better at AA than AAA, but everyone wants to keep better and better and better. So to answer that question, we have a great relationship with the Wolfpack, Connecticut Sun, Hartford Athletic, and even going up to Springfield with the Thunderbirds. Yeah. It's just, and also UConn. That's a big part of it too. So we're very supportive of all the sports teams in the market.
Yeah. That's something that did come up though, where you mentioned the Whalers, and I think Bruce had sort of said it almost feels like it's enough of time has passed where like the generation that can't get over the Whalers leaving has either finally just given it up, or there's folks that don't even don't even know what the Whalers were.
Yeah.
And now they're just interested in sport and what there is to sort of be a fan of and communities to join in the state. So it feels like it's kind of a really great time for the teams that do exist to take front and center stage of kind of the folks here in Connecticut. And you don't have to go to Citi Field or or Yankee Stadium or Fenway when you can have a great experience locally.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So going back, 10 years ago, we decided to create the Yard Goats and the brand. There was a lot of discussion internally about the colors, right? And so blue and green came up, and we had more conversations about the color than we did about the name of the team. That's how important it was. And we wanted to pay homage to the Whalers. And that was where the blue and green, rolls in, with the green a little bit and the, the goat of the goatee. And one of the things when we announced the name, we strategically waited about 60 days before the logo. So when you announce a baseball team, you then start saying, what does the Yard Goats mean, right? And they start, is it going to be a train? Is it going to be a goat? And you get all that, when we announced the name, we were by far the most hated people in the state of Connecticut. Everyone hated the name. Everyone thought it was, horrible name, was disrespectful for goats, disrespectful for the Indian population, like everything with regards to
right?
Insulting. And when we unveiled the logo ended up doing very well. And I remember reading on social media when the comments, which I typically don't read the comments because that's where a lot of hate lives. And people were saying that logo is, bad. And then some people would comment like, that's the Whalers colors. And if you're going to, this is our team and those are our colors. So if you have a problem with that, now you have the problem with the Whalers. And it was funny. The next year when we were able to announce our game opening the ballpark in 2017, it was April 13th, which was 20 years to the day that the Whalers had left.
Wow.
And it was like people were calling us marketing geniuses. And we said, and I'm like, the league just gave us the league gave us the date, and it's, we have every year we have done a Whalers alumni weekend. We pay homage to them. We actually have a logo that is inspired. We call it the hockey goat. Instead of a baseball bat, he's biting a hockey stick. And I know, the Hartford Wolfpack did a celebration this year, and we celebrated, but we just continue to move on. And one of the things that always would come up is that, the Whalers was my dad's team. This is my team now, right? And the dad says, well, my team's gone, so this is going to be my team now. So,
but it just shows the appetite for people in Connecticut, right? Because it's like, it's not even the same sport.
Correct.
But it's like, the adoption and sort of that, that affinity is there, which is amazing. And that's why it's, I feel that time is right.
Yeah, and pro sports in Hartford, I know people think of the Whalers, but when pro baseball has very deep roots in Hartford, going back to all the way back to like the 1870s. You have the dark blues, Hartford Senators. How do you guys try and tell that story of Hartford in its baseball history?
You know what? We probably have not done a great job with that. We highlight a lot of that history. There's some things that are there, like all our seats in the ballpark are blue. If you think of like a lot of ballparks, they have like that hunter green, and our blue seats were to pay homage to the dark blues, right?
Oh, wow.
So like things like that we do. One of the things that we really highlight is that there is an African American player named Johnny Schoolboy Taylor, and he played baseball and we highlight him every year as we play as the Hartford Schoolboys and pay homage to him. So those are the types of things that we do, a little bit here and there. But again, it's the history. So it goes back, but Hartford does have a great history of baseball.
Yeah, and you guys are just trying to keep innovating and moving forward and making your own history.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So you talk about the fan experience, and part of what likely will come up on the 24th is a bit of the now ever-present tech and innovation in the sport and in stadium. What have you seen as really the biggest opportunities, or are you piloting anything at the stadium that is using some newer tech to improve the fan experience?
So from the business side, we're more focused on data analytics than we ever been, right? So what is it, how do you get a fan to come to the ballpark? How do they buy a ticket? What's their fan experience and all those things? And, using any type of data points that we can along the way. I know on the baseball side, there is a ton of data analytics going on from TrackMan, which is a system that, takes the data from, pitches and the ball being hit and how things are. So they use a ton of that information and data. But something that, I can see, even more coming down the line is as, data, technology involves, is how do you make that fan experience better by just walking through the gates and not having you scan your ticket. That's coming. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out with regards to that type of technology. But, from at this point, we're using a lot of the data analytics side of that technology.
Yeah. Less so in the programming or some of the promos or the engagement to get fans to participate and vote, or I feel like there's a lot of apps and tools now that are trying to encourage the digital 50/50s or now with teams having formal relationships with even some of the betting apps, and you see these different types of integrations. So I wasn't sure if you've pushed the bounds over in those worlds at all, as far as kind of getting people on their phone while they're there versus actually enjoying the family experience.
So that's
right?
the part of it, right? Like I know there's some teams, like they've done like no phone nights where you have to leave your phone at the gate, right? So I think it's a balance of watching a baseball game, which is important because there is baseballs that go into the stands, the entertainment side, and also the technology side. One of the things that we did last year is that we put up QR codes everywhere so that if there is a fan experience that isn't what, or you want to get feedback about your experience, positive or negative, you get instantaneous response. And that's huge, because if someone goes to a location and it's dirty and they take the time to scan the QR code, give that information, and our response time is there, our response to the email is there, and thanking them for coming out and letting us know. That's what it is, right? We have 6,000 people in the ballpark, and if one has a bad experience, we want to make sure that.
Yeah, because now that's shared 10 times as fast than a good experience.
Exactly, exactly. Or even reacting to things on social media, reacting to, just feedback. Like asking a fan how was their experience, and then Well, the hot chocolate wasn't that hot last night. Okay, well, let's investigate what happened and try to make it right, because that's the goal, is to have the best experience for the fan when they walk into Dunkin Park, that the hot chocolate is hot.
What are some of the fan experiences that have taken off, that have gone very well for you guys?
So I talk about our baby goat race, and
Yeah.
I think that's one of the staples that we have with regards to, people will cheer it on. They'll watch it. It's entertaining, that piece. From getting merchandise, the different items that we have, the food and beverage. There's so many different experiences, but I think one of the ones that I always lead with are more the outrageous one, right? Like, we sell a 2-foot hot dog, right? Like, not just a regular hot dog, a 2-foot hot dog, right? So part of that is people, like, they'll buy that, they'll put it on social media, they'll eat it, they'll take video of themselves eating it, whatever the case it is. And then they tell that story, and really, as they do, they create FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. And more people come. They're like, "Oh, I saw the 2-foot hot dog. Where can I get that?" Type thing. So,
is the torpedo bat beer mug the next innovation?
I don't know if it will be, but there's a lot of different ideas that we come up with regards to that, and it's always funny to see something that's been around in baseball for a while get all of a sudden recognized,
right.
And all of a sudden torpedo bats are the term to be used. So
I like the hot dog and the milk, the goat milk.
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, you know what? I might go try that. Why not?
Well, I don't know if you know that the whole story is that was an item that we put out like 2 or 3 days before April Fools.
Yeah.
And it took off because of the extreme, right? It was a hot dog, all beef hot dog with peppers, onions, brown mustard, and whole goat milk.
Yeah.
And it got on to ESPN. It was on Nesson. It was made national news. People talked about it. And I remember getting a call from Brian Shackman at WTIC, who's going to be at the Sports Symposium. He said, is this a real item? And I said, no comment, right? Like, let's fuel the fire a little bit more. And then we announced on opening day it was not, but it got a lot of people interested. It got a lot of conversations talking about, made national news, people talking about it, in Denver, San Diego, all at the country. And just getting ready opening day, really, what it leads up to.
Yeah, and that's what you want, exposure. You want to get the brand out there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when I remember getting the ESPN clip, and it was like Hartford, Connecticut, right? I mean, it was like, that's getting out there and talking about the different experiences. Now, it's funny, when we did the April 1st, there was probably more people upset that they weren't going to be able to try the the hot dog and goat milk, but trust us, we tried it. It's something that we shelved.
Saved us the pain.
Exactly, yes.
You mentioned ESPN and Nesson. You guys have a broadcast deal with Nesson.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Was that purposeful? Was that just opportunistic? Or accessibility feels like potentially a challenge for some of the minor league teams or small. So allowing fans a easier viewing experience, getting them excited to potentially come, and Nesson's not the easiest to find these days.
No, but it was funny. Our game last night was on Nesson, and I got a text message from my brother-in-law, who's up in Sutton, Massachusetts. So the Yard Goats were on the game, and my aunt up in Lawrence, Massachusetts, sent a text message, said they were out at a bar doing karaoke, and Yard Goats were on TV. So, like, it's getting that exposure out there.
Great,
Nesson actually contacted us about our broadcast because the level of quality that we do with our broadcasting, because all our games are broadcast on MILB TV, and we take all our highlights so all the local stations can have those highlights. And Nesson had reached out last year and said, we really like the quality of your broadcast. We'd like to broadcast your games on, I think it was like 10 games that we had, and on Nesson Plus. And then they came back this year, and it was 39 games they wanted
Wow.
to broadcast.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing. And I'm just being a little sarcastic because I'm salty because Nesson isn't easy to get where I am. But
Understood. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, it's also our games are broadcast on the Bally's app and MILB.TV. And, it's just getting that exposure out there and create it. When we talked about, we were at the opportunity to go on Nesson. We talked to other teams in New England, right? Because New England Sports Network, we want to make sure everyone, understood that we were doing it. And I remember talking to the team up in Portland, and they said this is great because if someone's up in Portland and sees a minor league baseball team, they're going to like, oh, let's go to a Sea Dogs game, right? So for us to be able to showcase Hartford, downtown Hartford, Dunkin Park, and the fans, and put it on a regional channel or highlight it on ESPN with a hot dog and goat milk, it's always a good thing.
Yep.
I'm sure players love it too. It's like if they're not in the big show, then at least friends and family can watch them.
Absolutely,
in some way.
absolutely, yeah. And when you mention that, I always think of we actually broadcast all our home games in Spanish, and when we did that, we announced that was a directive from ownership when we were opening up the team and starting off, and I thought that was like it was important to ownership. So I'm like, all right, it's important to me and understanding it. But when the first Latin player came off and said, listen, my mom, who has never heard the game or understood the game, can listen to the broadcast and hear what I do on the field, it's something that's special. And that's just something that we always want to be Dunkin Park to be everyone's ballpark. And things like that are thinking outside the box that has allowed us to be, make this ballpark for everybody, and things like that we do.
Yeah, it's got to resonate on a different level. Like,
oh my God, yeah. Like things you don't even think about, right? Like one of the things that we did last year, and we did it, is we have closed captioning now for our games, and something that you don't think about, and if you don't have a hearing issue or disability, that you can actually scan a QR code and you can hear all the announcements or see all the announcements.
Oh, that's really
and then we do stuff pregame where it's on the video board so that you can see that, and things like that. We just, again, little things like that, we want to make it everyone's ballpark. So whether you're coming out for the first time or you're coming out for the 100th time, that's what we try to do.
Have you tested or thought of any opportunities to kind of, break that field spectator divide? You see it, in all-star games, and they're miking up players, or there's, they're trying to pull that relationship through. Is there anything you've tested or, considered as far as kind of getting that kind of player direct engagement with fans, other than meet and greets? And
yeah, I mean, that the part of it, and I have to explain to ownership time and sometimes some of our staff that we do have to play baseball, and there is a live baseball being hit and thrown. But really trying to get, when we designed Dunkin Park, the idea was to bring it, get the fans closer to the action as possible. And that's, whether you get, and also to see a little behind the curtain on how it works. So when you go by our production booth on the concourse, you can see all the AV equipment going on and what they're doing and such. When you go down to the field level, you see the batting cages, and pregame they'll be warming up so you can see the players, taking swings. We have seats that are, you're actually, when you're sitting there, you're closer to the batter than the pitcher is, so getting you as close as possible to the action. So because we are, we do play baseball, we are, somewhat protective of in between the lines things, but we try to get our players out to the fans as much as possible, whether it's autograph sessions or whatnot, and just get them connected. And I know a lot of our players will sign autographs after the game, and for no one not involved in the baseball side, I might not know who hit 2 home runs the other night, but I do know the player that takes time after the game and signs autographs.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure, and obviously it's not a direct comparison because your players aren't still in school, so the NIL piece. But I was kind of wondering whether the emphasis and now this very public, creating relationships with brands and earning off of, the name, image, and likeness has kind of translated to well, I can make some relationships in my local markets, and if I'm not going to get the big endorsement deal, and are there opportunities? So I was kind of wondering whether they've been volleying to get more FaceTime.
Yeah, some player, depends on the players, depends on the agent. We're and for us, it's a development team, right? So that's hard to realize, like, when you want to think about winning and losing, it's of developing these players. So who wears number 35 today might not wear number 35 tomorrow. So we highlight the prospects that come through and such, but their goal is not to be in Hartford, for long term.
Yeah.
They want to, promote and go from there. So a lot of them will move on, or a lot of them will, stay this level, and they'll do that for a year or two, and then the next chapter comes, whether they get promoted or they leave baseball and they move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure in the news you've heard of the Savannah Bananas, right? I'm sure
A little bit, yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure you probably have been asked about them a lot. But I was just wondering, is there anything, because they've just blown up on social media recently, and they're not a minor league team, but is there anything are they a competitor? Is there anything that you guys take from them, marketing-wise, promotionally, when it comes to fan-player experience?
Absolutely. We actually hosted the Bananas, I believe it was 2 years ago, and we actually took a lot of their concepts that they did, because there was a lot of things like off the field, like the size of the name tag, right? Like that's one of the things that that I remember picking up, is that you could see that name tag far away, so you weren't squinting and saying, "Oh, that's Tim," right? Things like that. They do a great job on social media. They do a great job entertaining fans. They do a great job of fan interaction. And when you're doing that with 80,000 fans at a football stadium, it's a whole different level. So it's funny, when we hosted that game, there was a lot of notes that we took, like, this is something we can do for fan interaction. This is how we could do for, as we start the game and start going with things. So a player doing a backflip, we can't control, but a player that makes a crazy play that will highlight that video, absolutely do that. So
that's really cool. Yeah, they've totally taken off on social media and stuff like that. But it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean it's an electric experience. It's like, it's a carnival rock concert. Magic Mike versus, you have the Boston Red Sox. Like, it's so much going on, and it's like a rock concert. It's just going, your sensory overload. It's going all these different directions and such. So they do a great job.
I kind of want to ask you about your day-to-day operations as well, because I feel like when people think of presidents of baseball teams, general managers, they automatically think of Moneyball, right?
Yeah.
I'm on the computer screen. I'm making the calls. Right? Where's Shapiro? Right?
Exactly. I'm calling teams to make trades.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Is it a little bit different? Is there similarities and differences at the AA level or minor league level?
Yeah. So I often say, like, in minor league baseball, we're more of a business manager than a baseball manager. I maintain the relationship with the Rockies, so I'll reach out to them once a week, or just see how things are going with regards to how the players are doing. Do they need anything with regards with the coaching staff, the facility wise? And a lot of times they're very happy. So it's not a heavy lift. So I maintain that. I also maintain a relationship with Major League Baseball, because we're governed by Major League Baseball. So whether there's committees that I'm on regards to scheduling, baseball operations, stadium operations, and whatnot, and those things. So I'm very fortunate we have a great staff. So our general manager, Mike Abramson, runs the day-to-day operations for the game day and such. And then I'm able to focus on little details as they come up, and also our community programs, because that's a big part of what we do in our off season, and just making an impact in the community. So whether it's our after school programs, our theater program, our culinary program, that we work with local, kids in Hartford, bringing them out to the ballpark, I'm able to work on those things, which has been a lot of fun. You
guys used to be the minor league affiliate of the Minnesota Twins.
Yes.
And now you're the Rockies. I don't remember what year that was when that switched over, but how does something like that work? Can you take us through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was actually in 2014 when that transition changed. But, it's changed since then, so that, it used to be you have an agreement. We had a AA franchise, and you worked with other teams with regards to your affiliation. Now our affiliation is directed by Major League Baseball. So Major League Baseball, will say, this is who your affiliate is. And it's a 10-year contract.
Okay.
So it's not as fluid as when we were in New Britain and we went from Minnesota Twins to the Rockies. But when we left the Twins, the Rockies were very and they have been great to work with, right? They understood because they were leaving another team, and so you have a conversation, you understand philosophies, you understand how we operate off the field, what the facility is like, because that's really what's important. They'll take care of all the baseball, but how the clubhouse is, what they where the apartments are, how the busing works, what the league is, and our league is very competitive.
Yeah.
If you think about who's in our league, it's Red Sox, Yankees, Mets, Orioles, you go Giants, Phillies, the Pirates. This is a very competitive league. So the Rockies love it because that's what they want their players to do, is to play against competitive teams and develop them so that they can go up to Denver.
Nice.
Do they ever have challenges with the height, the altitude differences? Like, do they complain about it not being a similar environment?
That's a good question. That's good.
No, that's a great question. No, it's every ballpark's different, right? I think that's I remember talking the prior director of player development for the Rockies, and they always say, well, what about the altitude? And the visiting team has to pitch in the same altitude, right? So you can't use that.
Yeah.
But whether our right field is 308, so they like that. They like that. They have to play the ball off the net in right field. It's a downtown ballpark, so it's a tight feel. They enjoy that piece. So there's never been anything about altitude or whatever, but it's funny because I remember talking about that, and they said, well, the visiting team has to pitch in the same altitude when you're in Denver.
Yeah.
So you can't use that as an excuse.
You had mentioned, dealing with the MLB. Do you get asked to participate in any of the potential, rule change or tech changes that they're implementing, like the automatic strike zone or some of the other, shifts?
Absolutely, yeah. So we've had pitch clocks for a long time, 15 years or so at least. So it's been, a lot of those changes come down in the minor league level, and we're able to utilize them. So we have larger bases at AA versus they do at single A. So there's little things like that. We've also been fortunate where being so close to ESPN, they've had some neat tech that they've wanted to try out and utilize the ballpark in games for doing that kind of stuff. So things that you haven't even seen yet, they've been able to utilize that. So I actually I met with a league supervisor yesterday, and I said, when you're ready to try out replay at the minor league baseball, we'd be happy to do that because we already have our 4-camera system and the technology that we can be able to provide that, type of thing.
That's cool.
I think that's part of what we hope there's more of coming out of the event, right? Is some more of these public-private, private-private, kind of collaborations. And we have great innovators in the state, great, manufacturing companies, great, doctors and everything. And it feels like there is an opportunity for some more testing or some more partnerships to explore some economic benefits to the state, some job creation, some business creation, and with the visibility of the Yard Goats and sort of the enterprise of sports and the visibility of sports, it feels like there's some opportunities there that maybe haven't been taken advantage of just yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I often talk about what it takes to put on a Yard Goats game, right? So, we have probably about 350 employees that are specifically because of a Yard Goats game, whether it's police, fire, EMTs, coaching staff, medical staff, players, bat boy, ushers, ticket takers. If you think of sports and what that is, it's not just nine players on the field, right? It goes pretty deep. And like what you're saying with technology and putting, minds together, there's definitely that number can probably grow based on so many different parts of sports that we haven't even thought about yet, and technology they can use.
Do you have any day-to-day with the training staff or sort of, any medical team relationships?
We're in contact with them, but for the most part, we don't. If they need something, then we're available. But giving them the resources that if there's a player that does have an injury, what is the protocol on getting that player off the field safely? The next step of whether it's going to the trainer's room or to the hospital, and what that looks like. So we work with them, on a daily basis, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
And is that collaborative with the Rocky staff?
With the Rocky staff, absolutely. So we work with them with regards to protocols, what happens in this situation, and how do we handle that, and how it's communicated, and what are the the 5 people that are involved, what are the steps from calling 911 to making sure that there's someone outside to greet the ambulance, to escort them in, to stopping traffic, to letting police and fire know that there's an emergency vehicle. There's so many details that go involved in it, and we'll connect probably once a homestand just to make sure that the communication is there, and make sure that we're all aware of we're playing baseball tonight, so we have to think baseball mode, not off-season mode type thing.
Yeah, we were talking with Bruce and Dr. Brett Wasserloff. He's an orthopedic surgeon, kind of team doctor, and they have a little bit of a different, dynamic because there isn't the the big ball club, and we were just sort of talking about how the players are incentivized to get back on the field and kind of what's in their best interest, and how has training and the perspective on lifting and nutrition and everything else sort of shifted, and how does that play a day to day?
Yeah, nutrition has played a huge part. So I've worked in baseball for 26 years. 26 years ago, your clubhouse manager was probably going to BJ's or Shaw's and cooking in a closet on a skillet, right? Yeah. Now there's
the firehouse meals.
Exactly, absolutely. Probably, yeah. Right. And now there's a nutritionist, there's a meal program, there is, how much carbs, how much protein, all those things. There's a strength and conditioning coach that now is with the team. Every player has a program with the fall that. There's the trainer that, here is the plan on your recovery after injury. If it's serious enough that needs surgery, they're going to this specialist, this doctor, and such, and then doing rehab, say at Arizona, where the spring training facility is. So they have a whole plan that's involved that, as of, and it's changed quite a bit. The player development piece in minor league baseball has changed over the last 4 or 5 years because of their that with Major League Baseball taking over minor league baseball. So making sure that the facilities are up to spec for safety, for player safety, player development, and such. So from the size of the locker room to the number of showers to the size of the weight room to the netting and on the batting cage, those are all things that 10 years ago there was no requirements that were standardized like they are now.
Probably, is it a little bit of a relief where it's, you have to obviously lead the operations and kind of oversee logistics of some of those things, but you're not necessarily on the hook for, the standards and that, there is such transition, with the players, and you don't have to be on the really like the pole position for making sure they rehab properly and see their way back. And
yeah, I mean, we support them, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's, making sure that we want them to, if there's something, we want them to get back to as quick as possible. And really, it's more supporting off the field, right? Like a player's mom had come in from Alabama last night. So I got to meet her and talk to her, and, welcome to Hartford, and, very exciting things, right? So making sure the family's happy is what we can do, and making sure that the team is performing on the field is what the staffing can do.
I think there was a story I heard of. I think it was Verlander when he went down to the minors, or there was a big pro name went down to the minors for a little bit, and they have some stints in rehab, but they buy like a big dinner for the team.
Yes.
Do you have any stories like that?
We actually just had a story. It actually got we sent out. So we had a major league rehab come in on this week with the Boston Red Sox. And they actually, so typically when a major league rehab comes in, so the story you might of Verlander's done it, Max Scherzer did it.
Scherzer, that's right, yeah.
Max actually bought the team dinner, but also bought the team like Apple AirPods, right? Like things like that.
Yeah,
so and I will get you the name. I apologize for not knowing the name.
It's like a tenth of a game check for him.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, correct. Well, the player for the Red Sox who was on rehab with the Portland Sea Dogs, he had a food truck show up, and so
cool.
Of course, taking care of all the Portland Sea Dogs players, but also all the Yard Goats players.
Oh, wow.
And all the employees at the ballpark.
Nice.
That's nice.
And so we actually put that on social media, and that was made Boston news and such. And it was such a great, those are little things that are just great that you get to see and that impact, and it's awesome. So yeah, I again, working in baseball, when I was working in New Hampshire, there's so many different rehabs that come through, and we've been fortunate in Hartford to have some great rehabs that have really, enjoyed coming to Dunkin Park, getting back to playing baseball, and they take care of people on the way.
I'm sure like some people just aren't that like that, but then it's got to be such a amazing experience. These young guys, are. That's their dream, right? And someone could very easily come through and just be completely checked out and going through the motions. But that's for them, that connection to what they've dreamed of has got to be such a great feeling when the player takes the time to spend it with them.
Absolutely. There was a player that when I was up in New Hampshire with the Toronto Blue Jays, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but when he played for us, he wasn't probably the nicest guy out there, right? He was a high prospect, and he was just on thought he was on a different level. Exactly. And he came back in a rehab, and when he did, we were walking down the hall, and he came up to me and he goes, "Hey, I want to thank you for helping me when I was here." And really genuine, I think people realize when you think you're here, but you're here, and then you realize everyone's here, right? And you're at that level. So really genuine, really appreciative of what he had when he was here, and wanted to thank me, which I thought was really nice. So you get to a certain level, and you're like, well, I got to remember where I came from. Yep. And I think that's a lot of what players think about.
Yeah, you gotta be humble. Sometimes you need to get checked too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's what happens. Yeah. It happens in baseball all the time.
Yeah.
So from a corporate relationship standpoint, is that something where there's just continued opportunity and continued interest, as obviously the fan base gets further entrenched and there's more visibility, the team has more reach. How do you weigh, sort of the relationships, the partners that you're looking for, or the relationship that you currently have, and sustaining those from a corporate standpoint?
Yeah, you said it. It's partnership, and I think that's the part that it's just if someone wants to come in and just buy a sign, it's not going to work, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's a partnership, and making sure understanding what their needs are, and talk about what we do at the ballpark, and making it work. So a couple of years ago, I remember. I had an interview with a local paper, and I said, "How many sponsors do we have?" And we had 135 sponsors. So anyone from a program ad to the naming rights of the ballpark, say Dunkin Donuts. I looked at that number this spring, and we were at 274. So that number has more than doubled over that time. And it just shows that, working with partners with what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish from a hospitality standpoint, from a community standpoint, from a branding standpoint, and what they see at the ballpark, it's just something that we've been very fortunate that we've done a good job with.
Has that pushed you though to think about non-baseball game activities? You know, you need more branding opportunities, right? Like more real estate for people to buy up. So is that on the roadmap as kind of mixed use now?
Definitely, absolutely. So from an advertising standpoint, we've added additional signage at the ballpark, video elements, things like that we've done and continue to do based on supply and demand, right? That piece of it. We are landlocked, so we're not going to build a dome over the ballpark or go 4 stories high. But we look at what the assets that we have and how we utilize them, from signage to promotion to the video board to all the digital assets that we have. There's so many different things. But one of the things that we've done, and actually it's next week, is we've created other events that we were able to bring to Dunkin Park. So our events team does a phenomenal job. We do probably about 200 outside events a year.
Wow.
That anywhere from a conference room rental
many,
yeah. So we have 32 high school baseball games this year, and we have 4 college games. And one of the college games next week is a 10:30 game. So we'll actually have 6,000 kids coming to the ballpark on a Friday afternoon to watch the game. That's not a Yard Goats game. It's University of St. Joe's versus Clark University. Yeah. So it'll be probably the largest Division III attendance games of the year. But that's the type of things that we do, is try to create those events. And that goes back to probably 2018, when we were selling out all our day games in the summertime. And we said we need more baseball here. And that's when actually we reached out to the Cape Cod League. And the Cape Cod League brought a team to Hartford, and we played a game in downtown Hartford, which the Cape had never played off the Cape except for Fenway Park and Dunkin Park, which was pretty cool. So,
anything we can look forward to this season that you can tell us about?
Lots of baseball.
Yep.
We're excited. We're announcing some fun events. We're thinking outside the box. So we have a baseball card show this year at the ballpark.
Oh, cool.
We have a lot of different events as we go into the off season, and just a lot of baseball.
Nice.
If Chomps and Choo Choo need a sibling, I feel like they should adopt Plucky, because that was the Whalers' mascot name. So if you ever have an addition to the family,
absolutely, we do have a lot of mascots, but Plucky comes out on Whalers Alumni Weekend, and always there. So yeah, it's Choppers and Choo Choo is probably the most. We get more requests from them than any other player, which is funny, and it's always fun to see them out.
Closing. Anything you're hoping to hear about, see at the event? Any, that a challenge you need solved that has been elusive that someone's going to bring up the answer to?
Absolutely, sharing ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the part that I'm excited about, is hearing other ideas and other concepts and what might work in, say, another sports industry or someone that supports a sports industry, and how I can utilize that at the ballpark for fan experience or for the baseball side. That's what I'm looking forward about.
Well, hopefully you can deliver for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It was a pleasure.
Tim, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Yeah.